Hello people, PJ back here with Exotic Car Hacks, and today we are going to be comparing my Lamborghini SVJ to my Ferrari Pista. Now, you saw that, I said Pista, not Pista, Pista. I don't know how you say it. Well, you say it like I always say, like you can afford it, but aren't they beautiful? Just like take a moment and breathe it in. Like sit there for yourself and be like, man, like, and then you're like, you realize, like I'm still watching YouTube videos on exotic cars instead of owning them. Like how sad is that, right? Like could you imagine getting laid in one of these cars? It's a lot more fun than looking at a YouTube video, and you need to experience that. So that's the first point. The second point here is we're going to be comparing today the SVJ and the Pista, and we're going to be looking at which one is really the better $500,000 car. Now, it is kind of a lie if we call them $500,000 cars, because this one starts like right under half and goes with options to like 7, and this one fully loaded, like as spec'd out as it can get, goes under 6. So there is a little bit of a difference between the two cars, and it's roughly about $100,000. But they're both the best of their kind, the best of their breed, and for that reason, since I own both of them and so many of you have asked, I decided to compare the two. So let's start with the basics of the keys. The key on the Ferrari is, of course, nice. This is a remote that comes with the Novitec exhaust, so it's not stock. But with the SVJ, you get a key that looks just like a Huracan key, except with no hydraulic for the trunk, so you can't really open it with a button. And you get this additional key, which is really cool because it opens the back of the car in case you need to work on the car. Not that any of us actually know how to work on it, because we can barely open that. So it wouldn't make any sense, but nonetheless, they give you the key, so as an owner, you feel really special for having it. So the basics of the car that we're going to use today to compare the three, or should I say the two, is really the exterior, the interior, the quality, and then of course the overall score for what we think is a better car all around for your money. I mean, for your hard-earned money, if you actually earned it, unless you're some trust fund kid that's sitting here being like, Daddy, buy me a car. At which point, you know, you got to be ashamed of yourself. You got to think about that, like for like 5 minutes. Take a moment. That's like 90% of you, so take a moment, self-reflect on that, and just ask yourself, did you earn it? Did you deserve it? Were you a good kid growing up? If you did, this could be one of your cars. So first, let's compare the exterior, because this is, I think, one of the key areas where there's a big gap between the two cars. So on the first hand, we have the Pista. So let's take a look at this. We have incredible lines. I've already done a review on the Pista. We're not going to talk about how it's different from the 488, but we're going to talk about what I call the drama effect. You see, one of the big things missing in exotic cars these days is the drama effect, which means that all the cars, like the regular 48s, the regular F8, the regular Aventadors, they're all becoming less and less dramatic, and you're required to pay more and more money to really have something exotic per se. And I think the Pista does two things really well. It brings together elegance and aggression in two very like simplistic cues. It takes very beautiful lines, but it accentuates it with bigger holes. And of course, you saw that I said a bigger hole. There is a hole here. Now, some of you are wondering, what do I do with this hole? There is many things you could do with this hole, but right now you're supposed to look at it because only air goes through. You see, they have mesh, so you don't try to put anything else here in case you get naughty. Huh? So it does that really well, and it combines carbon fiber with design really well. So the Pista is basically a really beautiful car, and it's really elegant and it's aggressive, and it just works really well. Now the SVJ, on the other hand, is just pure drama. Now I compare this to the Senna a lot because I say a fully loaded SVJ is basically the base of a Senna car that's used. But one of the things with this car is that on the surface you would think, well, it looks just like an Aventador, but it really doesn't. And the main part where everything changes is this exact view here. You really get a lot of this rear engine cover thing and all this carbon and this crazy like center mounted exhaust and these huge vents that capture babies and pigeons along the way, or even a raccoon if you're, you know, going fast enough. But these vents give the car such a dramatic look that you really don't realize until you take a close look at this car how different from an Aventador it is. Now, one other cue that makes it significantly different is how many of these holes and everything in the ALA system appear up front that really create a very dramatic scene. Now, This is where it gets a little bit interesting for me, because the SVJ, I like it better as a more understated car, meaning I have bought a Verde Indica SVJ, which is very loud. And doing it, if I was doing it again, I would have bought like a matte gray car, a matte black car, or even a white car, something more understated, because the car is almost too dramatic. On the other hand, I think the Pista here is a much, much better spec because it is louder, artsier, prettier, and so it works well for the body. So if I was to compare specs, I would say that this is probably one of the best Pista specs ever anywhere, and it works flawlessly with the car. However, if I was going to compare just design of cars, I would say that this SVJ is a more aggressive and more fitting design to the brand name of Lamborghini versus the Pista to Ferrari's brand name. So, you know, on the exterior, I'm gonna have to give it to the SVJ because I can't be biased and say, well, this is about my SVJ versus my Pista, but rather the Pista versus the SVJ. And for that reason, I give the SVJ the win point on design. Okay, so with the Pista, you're going to clearly see right here inside the car that there's actual room to get in and out. And you're going to see a lot of elements come together like carbon fiber, Alcantara, and again, dry carbon, gloss carbon, and then even the metal on the floors, like just absolutely striking design, but more importantly, extremely functional. The paddles are large, they're placed perfectly, you have a great view front and back, and the center console makes it easy with even a cup holder. So the functionality of the interior truly takes in place that regardless that it's a race car or not, it is still a car a normal person is going to drive and may have to drive from here to the office or here to dinner. And for that reason, the interior is not only spectacular in design with the mixture of components, but it's also spectacular in function. And I feel like this is really a beautifully crafted interior. And I've had hundreds of exotics, and this is really one of the best ones. And I take away the fact that obviously I love this color interior with this. Again, we're not talking about spec here. We're talking about the way and the function and the materials used. So absolutely striking and absolutely beautiful all around. Now, with the SVJ, you get a very different type of interior because you get what I call a cockpit. And you do get the, again, the doors going up, which does add to even the drama we're talking about design. But here you can clearly see you get a very cockpit-like interior, and you get, you know, your comfort seats, which are a must. You get your carbon fiber center console, and you get a very clammed interior. So while this car is more of a stunt car, I know the SVJ is a track car. The Aventador as a whole was more of a stunt car always. The SVJ is extremely capable on the track, but the one thing that I really can't get into that much on the interior is how commonly simple the interior just is compared to another Aventador. So really, they're not really doing anything special here, just adding carbon fiber. And in addition to that, which we could argue similar things about the Pista versus the 48, the one thing here that I think it really loses to the Pista on is that the interior, while very exciting to a newcomer or someone who perhaps has previously never really owned an exotic or seen it, very exciting. Over function though, like where the buttons are, how it functions and everything else, not so much. The only downfall to the Pista in terms of interior is really the radio function, which is very weak. When it comes to the SVJ on the other hand, the radio function is also crap, but really the fit, finish, quality, very classy and clean, but certainly inferior to the Pista, which is why for interior, the Pista takes one. Now, let's talk a little bit about two key things, performance, and then of course, bang for the buck. Now, we're gonna talk about the performance of the cars. So let's talk about which one is faster. You're not gonna like this one, but I think, and I've driven these now for quite some time, for a couple of months, I think the SVJ is way fucking more brutal and faster than the Pista. But the Pista is a lot more usable. Now, it's a subjective thing because even what I just said doesn't really make sense, and I'll explain what I mean. The Pista is rear-wheel drive, so you get a lot of that tail-happy stuff, and you gotta really get to know the car before you push it to the limits. This thing's all-wheel drive, so you can push the shit out of it to its limits, but it's so fucking fast that you're really scared to push it to its limits because even that just seems brutally fast to a degree that's just never seen before. And I used to really not drive this car that fast because I was like, oh, Aventadors are stunt cars. But as I've gotten more and more to know the SVJ in Corsa mode, it is brutal. Like, I mean, absolutely brutal. On the other hand, though, with the Pista, it's a lot more usable. Like, it's a lot more versatile, usable. You can take it in the street, you can take it to track. It's all fun all around. And I think because of that, the way the performance is used makes the Pista just a lot more fun because you don't need to really be in high revs or in race mode or anything to enjoy the car. You get great sounds at low revs, you get a lot of performance in high revs, and the same occurs with the SVJ, except the SVJ really feels like push me now, like a chick where you're like, you know, do me now. And if you don't do her hard, if you don't, you know, go full anal, then she's really not going to enjoy it. And that's how you got to think about it. Like, you agree?
Yep.
Okay. Why are you laughing again? You always laugh at my videos. Like, it's not funny. I'm serious. Like, I mean, you're doing it and it's not working because you got a 3-incher. You're trying to hit the 12, it ain't working, and then you got to go in the other hole because it feels bigger, you know? But anyways, I think I mean, you did anal once.
Tried.
Oh, did it hurt?
Yep.
Okay. Anyways, back to this. So what I was saying here earlier was that, again, the performance is so skewed in such different ways that while the cars are very similar, they act very differently when under pressure. For that reason, I'm going to have to say that the SVJ has better performance. However, the Pista has more usable performance, but this category is really about which is better performing. And I think while I may enjoy the performance of the Pista better, I still think the SVJ takes the cake for being a better performance car. And finally, which is a better bang for the buck? And this is really where it comes down to what matters the most to you, or really how rich you are. Now, I know this is going to sound really weird, but the richer you are, the more the Pista makes sense. The less rich you are, the more the SVJ makes sense. So what do I mean? Well, if you have a multitude of cars like I do, meaning like, or if you have access to 6-7 exotics and your choice for the day is Pista, or you'll really find the Pista to be a very refined and fantastic car all around. But it doesn't do the one thing that the SVJ does really well, is bring the drama to the scene the same way. So the SVJ is just a better car if that's your only exotic or hyper exotic. So if you only had the choice of one car, and it wasn't really about just the driving, but it was the overall concept of getting performance, getting fun factor, getting stunt factor, and also making sure you say fuck you to everyone wherever you go just by showing up, this car takes the cake for the money. Now, this is a better car. No matter how you look at it, there's nothing better than the Pista when you compare the two. Like, in all around, it's just a more balanced car. I think the word better would be the wrong word to use here. It's a more balanced car, and the SVJ is the better bang for the buck. Now, you can find a used SVJ in the high 4s, you know, low 5s for a coupe, high 5s, low 6s for a roadster, and you can find a Pista now, not this kind of spec, but a normal spec in the mid 4s, and it's still a very comparable car on the used market as well as on the new market. But at the end of the day, if I only could have one car the rest of my life, and it had to be between these two, it would have to be the SVJ. Now, probably do a roadster next time, which I'll do soon enough, but for now, this is my take between the Pista and the SVJ. Now make sure you're no longer jacking off the videos on YouTube, and instead click the link below and actually watch how you two could be hacking a car. You may not love me very much, you may not like my attitude, you may not even like how direct I am, but at the end of the day, I'm really good at what I do, which is what has owned me the opportunity not only to own hundreds of cars, but also the place to be consistent enough to be bringing you some really raw and unique content in the car space. So, I'm never paid by car manufacturers, I'm never paid by dealerships, and I never borrow cars. That's why my reviews are honest, they're direct, and they're not there to please you, they're just the other reality of how the car world works. So click the link below, take my free training, it's free, so even those of you that are broke can still take it. And for everyone else, hate my video, like it, leave me a mean comment, it's always fun to read. And otherwise, I will catch you on the next video for Exotic Car Hacks. Peace.